The emergency beacon cut through the void like a dying scream, its distress signal bouncing off asteroid fields and dead planets before finally reaching the outer sensors of the human exploration vessel Defiance. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her weathered hands gripping the command console as the communications officer decoded the message. "Captain, you're not going to believe this," Lieutenant Rodriguez said, his voice tight with disbelief. "The signal is from a Kitheran refugee ship. They're requesting immediate assistance." Chen's jaw tightened. The Kithera were a peaceful species known throughout the galaxy for their incredible healing abilities and their willingness to help anyone in need, regardless of species or politics. They had served as the galaxy's unofficial medical corps for over 3 centuries, never asking for payment, never refusing aid to the sick or wounded. "How many souls on board?" Chen asked. "Sensors indicate approximately 50,000, Captain. Men, women, children, they're all there." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what had happened to the Kithera. 3 weeks ago, the Galactic Council had made a decision that shocked even the most hardened diplomats. When the Kithera homeworld had been struck by a plague that their own healing abilities couldn't cure, they had reached out to the galaxy for help. Instead of assistance, they received accusations. The Zephyrian Empire claimed the plague was a biological weapon that had backfired. The Confederation of Free Worlds insisted it was divine punishment for the Kithera's unnatural healing abilities. Even species that had been saved by Kitheran healers turned their backs, afraid that association would bring the same mysterious plague upon them. Within days, every Kitheran settlement, hospital, and medical station across the galaxy had been forcibly evacuated. The entire species, millions of beings who had dedicated their lives to healing others, were branded as plague carriers and exiled from civilized space. The Galactic Council had given them exactly 72 hours to gather what they could and leave. "Captain," Rodriguez continued, "there's more. The ship's life support is failing. They have maybe 6 hours of breathable air left." Chen looked around her bridge crew. She saw the same mixture of anger and determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. The Defiance was one of 12 human vessels that had been exploring this remote sector when the Kitheran exile began. They were far from Earth, far from the Galactic Council's immediate influence, and far from anyone who might stop them from doing what was right. "Any other ships responding to their distress call?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. We're the only ones within range." Chen wasn't surprised. The galaxy had made its position clear. The Kithera were untouchable, and anyone who helped them would face the same fate. Economic sanctions, military action, complete isolation. From galactic society, these were the threats that kept even the most compassionate species from offering aid. But humans had never been particularly good at following orders that went against their conscience. "Set. Course for the refugee ship," Chen commanded. "Maximum speed." "Captain," her first officer, Commander Hassan, said quietly, "if we do this, Earth will face consequences. The Council has made it clear that anyone offering aid to the Kithera will be considered in violation of the quarantine protocols." Chen turned to face her crew. "The Kithera saved my daughter's life when she was 8 years old. A Kitheran healer worked for 14 hours straight to repair the damage from her shuttle crash, asking for nothing in return except the chance to help. How many of you have similar stories?" Hands slowly rose around the bridge. Nearly every human in the galaxy had been touched by Kitheran healing at some point. Their medical stations had been beacons of hope in an often cruel universe. "They healed our bodies," Chen continued, "and now their spirits are broken. Their own healing gift couldn't save them from this plague, and the galaxy they served has cast them out like garbage. We're going to help them, not because it's easy, but because it's right." The Defiance changed course, its engines pushing the ship to its limits as they raced toward the dying refugee vessel. As they drew closer, the sensors began picking up more details. The Kitheran ship was ancient, clearly a civilian transport never meant for long-distance travel. Its hull showed signs of hasty modifications, extra life support pods welded to the exterior in a desperate attempt to carry more evacuees. "Captain, incoming transmission from the refugee ship," Rodriguez reported. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the face of an elderly Kitheran. Their pale blue skin had the distinctive silver markings that indicated a master healer, someone who had dedicated their entire century-long life to serving others. Their large, gentle eyes were filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Human vessel, this is Elder Thymel of the medical ship Sanctuary," Please, if you are receiving this transmission, we do not ask you to risk your standing with the Galactic Council. We know the consequences you face for helping us. We only ask that you transmit our final messages to our families scattered across the refugee fleet. Chen stepped forward, her voice firm and clear. Elder Thymel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the human ship Defiance. We're not here to take messages. We're here to help. Prepare for emergency docking. The Kitherin's eyes widened in shock. Captain Chen, you don't understand. We are exiled. Contaminated. The Council has declared us. The Council can declare whatever they want, Chen interrupted. But they don't speak for humanity. We remember who stood by us when our colonies were dying from the red fever. We remember who asked for nothing when they saved our children from the neural plague. Today, we stand by you. As the Defiance moved into position to dock with the failing refugee ship, Chen activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands prepare for emergency rescue operations. We're bringing aboard 50,000 refugees, and we're going to make sure every single one of them survives. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Chen could see the weight of what they were doing in their movements. They weren't just rescuing refugees. They were declaring war on an entire galactic system that had forgotten what compassion meant, and they were just getting started. The docking procedure took 3 hours of careful maneuvering. The Kitheran ship sanctuary was barely holding together, its hull plates warped from hasty modifications and years of neglect. As the airlock sealed and atmosphere equalized, Captain Chen led the first rescue team aboard. The sight that greeted them was heartbreaking. Kitheran families huddled together in makeshift shelters constructed from medical equipment and cargo containers. Children clung to their parents, their normally vibrant silver markings dulled with stress and malnutrition. The air was thick with the smell of failing life support systems and too many people in too small a space. Elder Thymel approached them slowly, his dignified bearing intact despite the circumstances. Captain Chen, I must warn you once more. The galactic plague that destroyed our world, we still don't know how it spreads. You risk contaminating your own crew. Chen removed her helmet, breathing the ship's recycled air without hesitation. Elder, if you were dangerous to us, you would have warned us away more forcefully. The Kithera have never brought harm to any species, and I don't believe you're starting now. Behind her, the human rescue teams began organizing the evacuation with military precision. Medical officers moved through the crowds, assessing the most critical cases while engineers worked to stabilize the failing ship systems long enough to complete the transfer. Sir, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through her comm. Incoming priority message from Admiral Torres on Luna Base. The situation is complicated. Chen touched her earpiece. Patch him through to a private channel. Admiral Torres's gruff voice filled her ear. Chen, tell me you haven't done what I think you've done. Sir, we've rescued 50,000 beings who were left to die in space. I'm prepared to face any consequences for that decision. There was a long pause. You're not alone out there, Captain. 3 hours ago, the civilian transport New Horizon picked up 2 Kitharan medical stations near the Centauri border. An hour ago, the cargo hauler Big Dreams rescued a family of Kitharan healers whose ship had been sabotaged by raiders. And 30 minutes ago, I authorized the deployment of the Third Fleet to begin systematic search and rescue operations across this entire sector. Chen felt her heart skip a beat. Sir? The President addressed the United Nations this morning. She reminded them that Earth's colonial expansion succeeded largely because Kitharan medical teams were willing to serve in our most dangerous frontier settlements. She's declared the exile of the Kithera to be a crime against galactic civilization, and she's authorized the use of any and all human resources to provide them sanctuary. Around the cargo bay, Chen could see her crew working alongside Kitharan refugees. Human engineers were teaching young Kitharans how to operate emergency equipment, while Kitharan healers were quietly treating injured human crew members who had been hurt during the rescue operation. It was cooperation born of mutual respect and shared adversity. What about the Galactic Council's response? Chen asked. Predictable, Torres replied. Economic sanctions against Earth, threats to revoke our trading privileges, the usual diplomatic bluster. The Zephyrian Empire is being particularly vocal about it. But here's the interesting thing. We're getting private communications from species across the galaxy. Many of them want to help, but are too afraid of the political consequences. They're asking us to speak for them. As if summoned by the conversation, Commander Hassan approached with a data pad. "Captain, you need to see this. We're receiving messages from Kitharan refugee groups throughout the galaxy. Word is spreading that humans are willing to help." Chen reviewed the data. The scale was staggering. Millions of Kithara scattered across hundreds of worlds, all facing the same cruel exile. Many were trapped on hostile worlds or in failing ships, running out of supplies and hope. "Sir," she said to Admiral Torres, "we're going to need more ships." "Already on it. Every available human vessel in this sector has been reassigned to refugee operations. We're also repurposing colony ships and cargo haulers. But Chen, it's not going to be enough. Not for all of them." Elder Thymel had been listening quietly to the rescue coordination. Now he approached Chen with careful steps. "Captain, may I speak freely?" Chen nodded. "My people have served the galaxy for 3 centuries. In all that time we have seen the best and worst of every species. We have healed the wounds of warriors and the hearts of grieving parents. We have asked for nothing and given everything." The elder's voice carried the weight of profound sadness. "But in our darkest hour, only humanity answered our call for help." "Why?" Chen looked around the cargo bay at her crew. They came from different Earth continents, different colonies, different backgrounds, but they shared something that seemed to be rare in the galaxy, a belief that doing right mattered more than doing what was safe. "Because," she said simply, "someone has to. The consequences will be severe," Thymel warned. "The galaxy will not forgive this defiance easily. Your species will face isolation, economic hardship, perhaps even military action." Commander Hassan overheard the conversation and stepped forward. "Elder Thymel, may I tell you about human history?" The Kitharan nodded. 3 centuries ago, when we first developed faster than light travel, we were a divided species. We had just finished a series of devastating wars that nearly destroyed our planet. Many thought we were too violent, too chaotic to join galactic civilization. Hassan's voice carried a note of pride. "But we learned something in those dark times. We learned that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about how much you can endure for the people who can't protect themselves." Around them, the evacuation continued. Human crews were working overtime to modify cargo holds and passenger compartments to accommodate Kitharan physiology. The ship's food processors were being reconfigured to produce nutrition suited to Kitharan dietary needs. "Every time our species has faced a choice between safety and principle," Hassan continued, "we've chosen principle. It's cost us allies, trade agreements, even lives, but it's also made us who we are." Elder Thymel's silver markings began to brighten slightly, a sign of emotional response in his species. "You would risk everything for strangers?" "You're not strangers," Chen replied. "You're people who need help. That's enough." The communications array suddenly came alive with incoming messages. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Captain, we're receiving contact from human ships across 3 sectors. The Magnificent, the Wanderer, the Second Chance, they're all reporting successful rescue operations." "How many?" Chen asked. "Last count, over 200,000 Kithara, safely aboard human vessels with more operations ongoing." Chen felt a surge of pride in her species. Across the galaxy, humans were making the same choice her crew had made, to do what was right regardless of the cost. They were keeping faith with beings who had shown them nothing but kindness and compassion, but she also felt the weight of what was coming. The galaxy had made its position clear, and humanity had chosen to defy it. There would be consequences, and they would be severe. Elder Thymel seemed to sense her thoughts. "Captain Chen, my people are healers. We understand that sometimes, to cure a disease, you must be willing to cut away infected tissue." His large eyes met hers with surprising determination. Perhaps the galaxy needs healing. Perhaps it needs someone willing to make the hard cuts. As the last of the refugees were transferred to the Defiance, Chen realized they had passed a point of no return. Humanity had chosen its path, and now they would see it through to the end, whatever that end might be. The warning came at 0400 ship time, jolting Captain Chen from an uneasy sleep. The Defiance had been running at maximum capacity for 6 days. Her cargo bays converted into temporary living quarters for 3,000 Kitharan refugees. The ship's crew had barely slept, working around the clock to accommodate their unexpected passengers. "Captain, to the bridge immediately," came Commander Hassan's urgent voice over the comm. "We have incoming ships on intercept course." Chen was on the bridge within minutes, still fastening her uniform. The tactical display showed 3 massive vessels approaching from the galactic core, Zephyrian Imperial Navy ships, their distinctive crystalline hulls glinting with weapon signatures. Identification? She asked. The flagship Eternal Dominion and 2 heavy cruisers, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, ordering us to prepare for boarding and inspection. Chen studied the formation. Zephyrian warships were among the most advanced in the galaxy. Their energy shields and plasma cannons capable of reducing a human vessel to debris within minutes. The Defiance was an exploration ship armed with only basic defensive systems. Any word from the fleet? She asked. Admiral Torres reports that similar confrontations are happening throughout the sector. The Galactic Council has authorized enforcement actions against any vessels violating the Catheran quarantine protocols. Elder Thymel appeared on the bridge, having insisted on observing any interactions with galactic authorities. His presence had become a source of calm for both his people and the human crew during the past week. Now his silver markings flickered with anxiety. "Captain," he said quietly, "you should surrender us. Your ship cannot stand against Imperial Navy vessels." Chen looked at the tactical display again. The Zephyrians were right. In any direct confrontation, the Defiance would be destroyed. But there were other considerations beyond firepower. Rodriguez opened a channel to the Eternal Dominion. The main screen shimmered, revealing the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship. At its center stood Admiral Kreshatar, a being whose crystalline body reflected light in patterns that indicated high military rank. The Zephyrians were a proud species, convinced of their moral and technological superiority over most other galactic civilizations. Captain Chen of the human vessel Defiance. Kreshtar's voice resonated with harmonic overtones. "You are in violation of Galactic Council Emergency Protocol 847. You will immediately surrender all Catheran passengers for proper containment and processing." Chen stepped forward, her voice steady. "Admiral Kreshatar, the beings aboard this ship are refugees seeking sanctuary. They are not criminals or plague carriers. They are healers who have served the galaxy faithfully for centuries." "The nature of their service is irrelevant," Kreshtar replied coldly. "They carry a biological threat that could devastate entire worlds. The Galactic Council has determined that quarantine protocols must be enforced without exception. And what exactly does containment and processing involve, Admiral?" There was a pause. The harmonics in Kreshatar's voice shifted slightly. "That information is classified under military authority." Chen felt a chill. She had studied enough galactic politics to understand what classified military protocols usually meant when dealing with contaminated populations. The galaxy's solution to the Catheran problem wasn't exile, it was elimination. "I'm afraid I can't comply with that request, Admiral." The tactical display suddenly lit up with warning indicators. All 3 Zephyrian ships had powered their weapon systems and raised their shields. The Eternal Dominion was moving into firing position. "Captain Chen, you have 30 seconds to reconsider. Your vessel cannot survive what we are prepared to do." Commander Hassan leaned close to Chen's ear. "Captain, sensors are detecting something unusual. There are human ships incoming from multiple vectors. A lot of them." Chen allowed herself a slight smile. "Admiral Kreshatar, before you take any irreversible actions, I suggest you scan the area more thoroughly." On the Zephyrian bridge, she could see officers working frantically at their sensor stations. Kreshtar's harmonic patterns shifted to what Chen recognized as confusion, then alarm. "Impossible," the Admiral whispered. Emerging from behind asteroid fields and nebula clouds came a sight that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. 12 human warships materialized as if from nowhere, their sleek forms moving with coordinated precision. But it wasn't just military vessels. Mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger transports, even private yachts. Every human vessel in the sector had answered an unspoken call. "Admiral," Chen said calmly, "allow me to introduce the 3rd Human Fleet. Admiral, Torres sends his compliments and asks if you require assistance with anything." The main screen split to show Admiral Torres aboard his flagship Indomitable. The grizzled veteran's face was set in grim determination. "Admiral Kreshatar, I believe you were threatening one of my ships. I'm afraid that's not going to work out well for you." The tactical situation had completely reversed. The Zephyrian ships, for all their individual superiority, were now outnumbered 4-1. More importantly, they were surrounded. This is an act of war, Crescitar declared, his harmonic patterns reaching aggressive frequencies. The Zephyrian Empire will not tolerate this defiance of galactic law. Actually, Torres replied, this is an act of mercy. We're preventing you from making a mistake you'll regret for generations. His voice hardened. The humans have decided that the Cathara are under our protection. Any attempt to harm them will be considered an attack on human territory. Chen watched the standoff unfold with a mixture of pride and dread. Humanity had just declared itself willing to fight the galaxy's most powerful military force over a matter of principle. It was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Elder Thamel stepped forward, his voice carrying across the bridge with quiet authority. Admiral Crescitar, may I speak? The Zephyrian commander's attention focused on the elderly Kitharan. You are Thamel, former chief medical officer of the Galactic Health Service. Your people's arrogance led to this plague. You have nothing to say that interests us. Perhaps not, Thamel replied with dignity, but I know things about the plague that destroyed my world. Things that might interest you greatly, Admiral. Things about how it started and who was truly responsible. The silence that followed was profound. Chen could see the calculation in Crescitar's crystalline features. The Zephyrian Empire had been among the loudest voices calling for Kitharan exile, claiming the plague was evidence of their dangerous experimentation with biological forces. Explain, Crescitar commanded. Not here, Thamel said firmly. Not while your weapons are trained on the people who risked everything to save my species. Lower your weapons, recall your ships, and I will share everything we discovered about the plague's origin. Chen realized that Elder Thamel was gambling with information that could change everything. The Kithara had been investigating their plague's source when the galaxy abandoned them. If they had discovered something significant, Captain Chen, Admiral Torres's voice came over the comm. Sensors are detecting massive hyperspace signatures incoming. We've got company. The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Ships from across the galaxy were arriving. Confederation cruisers, free world destroyers, even vessels from smaller species that rarely involve themselves in galactic politics. Word of the confrontation had spread and everyone wanted to see how it would end. But Chen also noticed something else. Mixed among the military vessels were civilian ships, freighters, transports, even medical ships. As the identification signals came through, she realized what was happening. Admiral Crescitar, she said, you might want to reconsider your position. Those aren't just warships arriving. They're evacuation fleets. Species from across the galaxy are coming to help the Cathara. The Zephyrian Admiral's harmonic patterns were now chaotic with confusion and rage. This is impossible. The Galactic Council voted for exile. The protocols are in place. The Galactic Council, Torres said with obvious satisfaction, represents governments, not people. And the people, it seems, remember what the Cathara have done for them. Elder Thamel's silver markings were now glowing brightly, a sign of hope in his species. Admiral Crescitar, the galaxy is choosing compassion over fear. You can be part of that choice or you can stand against it, but either way, the choice will be made. The standoff stretched into minutes, then hours. Ships from dozens of species held position around the Defiance, creating an impromptu coalition united by a single principle, that those who heal should not be abandoned in their hour of need. Finally, Admiral Crescitar's image flickered on the screen one last time. This matter is not concluded, Captain Chen. The Empire remembers its enemies. The Zephyrian ships powered down their weapons and withdrew to minimum safe distance. They didn't leave entirely, but they were no longer an immediate threat. Chen looked around her bridge at the exhausted but determined faces of her crew. They had helped start something that was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, a rebellion against the abandonment of compassion. But she also knew that Admiral Crescitar's warning was more than idle threat. They had made enemies today, powerful ones who would not forget this humiliation. The real war was just beginning. The makeshift conference room aboard the Defiance was crowded with representatives from 12 species, their translators working overtime to handle the overlapping conversations. Captain Chen sat at one end of the table, while Elder Thamel occupied the place of honor at the other end. Between them sat beings who had risked their careers, their ships, and their peoples standing with the Galactic Council to answer humanity's call for help. Dr. Melissa Park, the ship's chief science officer, was presenting data that would change everything. "The biological analysis is conclusive," she said, her holographic displays showing complex molecular structures. "The plague that devastated the Kitharan homeworld wasn't natural. It was engineered specifically to target Kitharan physiology." Captain Zethmar of the Altarian medical ship Harmony leaned forward, his scaled features showing disbelief. "That's impossible. No known species has the biotechnology necessary to create such a specific pathogen." "No known species," Elder Thymel said quietly. "Except one." The room fell silent. Chen felt her stomach drop as the implications became clear. "The Zephyrian Empire," Thymel continued, "has been developing biological weapons for decades. My people discovered this when we were called to treat a mysterious illness affecting their military research stations. We thought we were helping them solve a contamination problem. We were actually helping them perfect a weapon designed to eliminate us." Dr. Park activated another display. "The plague's genetic structure contains markers that are identical to Zephyrian bioengineering techniques. But more damning than that, the delivery system required intimate knowledge of Kitharan healing practices. Someone had to know exactly how our guests would respond to the initial outbreak to ensure maximum spread." Commander Veltar of the Confederation ship Righteous Fury slammed his fist on the table. "You're saying the Zephyrians created this plague specifically to destroy the Kithara, then convince the galaxy that the victims were the criminals?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Thymel replied. "My people spent their final days on the homeworld not just fighting the plague, but uncovering its true origin. By the time we had proof, it was too late. The galaxy had already accepted the Empire's version of events." Chen felt a burning anger building in her chest. "So they committed genocide, then convinced everyone else that the victims deserved it. But why?" asked Captain Liu of the human vessel New Shanghai. "The Kithara never threatened anyone. They were healers, not warriors." Thymel's silver markings dimmed with profound sadness. "Because we were witnesses. In our medical work throughout the galaxy, we had seen too much evidence of the Empire's experiments with biological weapons. We were beginning to speak out about what we had observed. The Empire needed to silence us before we could expose their violations of the Galactic Biological Weapons Treaty." Dr. Park brought up another set of data. "There's more. The analysis shows that the plague was designed with a very specific limitation. It affects only pure-strain Kithara. Anyone with mixed heritage or genetic modification would be immune. Which explains why they didn't just poison all the medical supplies," Chen realized. "They needed to be able to claim it was a natural plague that uniquely affected the Kithara, rather than an obvious biological attack." The room erupted in angry voices as the full scope of the Empire's crime became clear. They hadn't just committed genocide. They had manipulated the entire galaxy into becoming accomplices by turning their victims into outcasts. Admiral Torres's image appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the fleet command ship. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid the situation has escalated. Our deep space sensors are detecting a massive Imperial fleet moving toward this sector. At least 40 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts." Captain Chen stood up. "How long until they arrive?"
18 hours at their current speed."
"But that's not our biggest problem. The Galactic Council has issued an ultimatum. Any species that continues to harbor Kitharan refugees will be expelled from the Council and face complete economic isolation." Around the table, the alien captains exchanged worried glances. For smaller species, economic isolation from the galactic community could mean the collapse of their civilizations. "What's the response been?" Chen asked. Torres's expression was grim. "Mixed. About half the rescue fleets have withdrawn. The others are requesting instructions from their home governments. The political pressure is enormous." Elder Thymel rose slowly from his seat. "Captains, you have already done more than anyone had the right to expect. You have saved hundreds of thousands of my people when the galaxy abandoned us. If you must withdraw now to protect your own worlds, we understand." "The hell we do," Captain Zethmar said firmly. "My people remember the plague of 2387. Kitharan healers worked for 6 months straight to save our colonies, refusing relief even when they were collapsing from exhaustion. The Altarian Republic doesn't abandon its friends." One by one, the other captains voiced their agreement. The Vegan Confederacy, the Free Traders Alliance, the Independent Mining Consortium, species that rarely agreed on anything, were united in their determination to protect the Kithara. "Admirable," Torres said, "but we need more than determination. We need a strategy. Intelligence reports suggest the Empire isn't just planning to enforce the quarantine. They're planning to finish what they started. Dr. Park cleared her throat. Actually, Admiral, I think we might have something better than a strategy. We have proof of their crimes, and we have something else, a cure. The room went silent again. Chen stared at her science officer. A cure for the plague? The Ketharan's own research notes, combined with our analysis of the plague's structure, have given us everything we need. The biological weapon was sophisticated, but it was also rushed. They left back doors in the genetic code that we can exploit. Park's excitement was evident. We can not only cure the plague, we can immunize against it. More importantly, we can create a vaccine that will protect any species from similar bioweapons. Elder Thymel's markings flared brighter than Chen had ever seen them. You mean... we can save your homeworld. We can bring your people home. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. If they could cure the plague and prove the Empire's guilt, everything would change. The Ketharans wouldn't just be refugees. They would be the wronged party demanding justice. There's just one problem, Dr. Park continued. To produce enough of the cure for an entire planet, we need access to the biomanufacturing facilities on Cathara Prime, which means we need to take the homeworld back from Imperial control. Chen finished. Admiral Torres nodded grimly. The Empire has had 3 weeks to establish defensive positions on Cathara Prime. Intelligence suggests they've been strip mining the planet's medical research facilities and destroying evidence of their crimes. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. Captain Chen looked around the room at the faces of beings who had risked everything for the principle that right mattered more than power. They were merchants and explorers, healers and teachers, not soldiers. But they had chosen to stand against the galaxy's most powerful military force. Admiral Torres, she said, request permission to lead the advance force to Cathara Prime. Captain, that's a suicide mission. The Empire has had weeks to fortify that system. Maybe, but we have something they don't expect. Proof of their crimes and the means to undo them. Chen's voice carried the same determination that had driven humanity to the stars. Besides, since when do humans back down from a fight just because the odds are bad? Elder Thymel approached her, his ancient eyes filled with hope and fear. Captain Chen, my people are healers, not warriors. We cannot ask you to die for our homeworld. You're not asking, Chen replied. We're volunteering, because that's what you do for family. As the conference broke up to prepare for what might be the most desperate military action in galactic history, Chen realized that humanity had found something in this conflict that they had been searching for since they first reached the stars. A cause worth fighting for that unified not just their own species, but beings from across the galaxy. The Empire had started this war with lies and genocide. Humanity was going to end it with truth and justice, even if it killed them all. The Cathara system looked like a graveyard when the human-led coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace. What had once been a thriving star system filled with medical research stations and healing centers was now a debris field of broken ships and shattered habitats. At the center of it all, Cathara Prime hung in space like a wounded animal, its once green continents now scarred with the geometric patterns of Imperial strip mining operations. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now serving as the Coalition's command ship, despite being the smallest vessel in the fleet. Around her, holographic displays showed the tactical situation in devastating detail. Sensor analysis complete, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. 42 Imperial ships in defensive formation around the planet. They've established orbital weapons platforms at all major approach vectors. Admiral Torres's image flickered on the main screen from his position aboard the Indomitable. Chen, this is worse than we expected. Those aren't just standard defensive positions. They've turned the entire planet into a fortress. Intelligence suggests they're not just stripping the research facilities. They're planning to sterilize the surface. Elder Thymel, who had insisted on being present for the battle despite the risks, stepped forward. His silver markings were dim with grief as he observed the destruction of his homeworld. Captain, there are still Catharans down there. When the evacuation began, many refused to leave. They chose to stay and protect our most sacred medical archives rather than abandon everything our people had built. How many? Chen asked. Perhaps 10,000. They've been hiding in the underground research complexes, but the Imperial forces have been systematically destroying each facility as they finish their data harvesting. Dr. Park looked up from her science station. Captain, the biomanufacturing facility we need is located in the northern continent's primary research complex. If the Empire has destroyed it, then millions of Kitharans scattered across the galaxy will never be able to return home, Chen finished. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. The Imperial fleet was moving from defensive positions to intercept formation. Incoming transmission, Rodriguez reported. It's Admiral Kreshitar. Chen wasn't surprised. The Zephyrian commander who had tried to stop them at their first rescue was apparently leading the defense of Cathera Prime. The main screen shifted to show Kreshitar's crystalline form, his harmonic patterns now clearly indicating aggressive hostility. Captain Chen, you have brought a collection of civilian vessels and obsolete warships against the might of the Imperial Navy. This is not courage. This is suicide. Admiral, Chen replied calmly, we're here to reclaim the Kitharan homeworld and expose the truth about your Empire's crimes. You can withdraw your forces and allow us to proceed, or you can try to stop us. Your choice. There is no truth to expose, Kreshitar said, but Chen noticed his harmonic patterns flickered slightly, a sign of deception in Zephyrian physiology. The Kitharans brought plague upon themselves through reckless experimentation. We are here to ensure their dangerous research never threatens the galaxy again. Dr. Park stepped into view of the communication screen. Admiral, we have complete biological analysis of the plague that destroyed this world. We know it was artificially created. We know it was specifically designed to target Kitharan physiology. And we know it contains genetic markers that can only have come from Zephyrian bioweapons research. For the first time, Kreshitar's perfect composure cracked. His harmonic patterns shifted to frequencies that Chen recognized as shock and anger. Lies, the Admiral declared, but his voice lacked conviction. Desperate fabrications from species that refused to accept the necessity of quarantine protocols. Then let's settle this, Chen said. If you're so confident in your version of events, allow neutral observers to examine the evidence. The Galactic Health Service has investigators standing by. The Galactic Health Service has been compromised by Kitharan sympathizers, Kreshitar snapped. The Empire recognizes no authority in this matter except its own. Chen exchanged glances with Admiral Torres. The Zephyrian response confirmed what they had suspected. The Empire couldn't afford to let independent investigators examine the evidence because it would expose their guilt. In that case, Admiral, we have nothing more to discuss. The communication ended. And immediately the Imperial fleet began moving to attack formation. Chen felt her heart rate increase as the reality of what they faced became clear. The Coalition fleet consisted of 37 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels with minimal armament. The Imperial Navy had 42 dedicated warships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts. All ships, this is Admiral Torres, came the broadcast to the Coalition fleet. Execute Attack Plan Gamma, remember. Our goal isn't to win a fleet. Engagement, it's to get a landing force to the, surface and hold long enough for Dr. Park to synthesize the cure. The battle began with a coordinated assault by the human warships, their energy weapons lighting up space as they engaged the Imperial picket ships. The Indomitable and her sister ships were outnumbered but not outfought. Human tactical doctrine emphasized speed and surprise over brute force, but it was the civilian vessels that made the difference. Cargo ships converted into troop transports used their superior maneuverability to slip past Imperial defensive lines. Mining vessels, their hulls reinforced for asteroid operations, absorbed punishment that would have destroyed military ships while delivering boarding parties to Imperial installations. Landing force away, reported Commander Hassan as the first wave of shuttles launched toward the planet's surface. Dr. Park is aboard the lead transport with a full biosynthesis team. Chen watched the tactical display as the desperate mission unfolded. On the surface, teams of human Marines and alien volunteers were fighting their way through Imperial ground forces to reach the hidden research facilities. In orbit, the Coalition fleet was taking heavy casualties but holding their positions. Then everything changed. Captain, Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with excitement. We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's coming from the Kitharan survivors. Elder Thymel rushed to the communication station as a familiar voice filled the bridge. Elder Thymel, this is Dr. Silmoth from the Northern Research Complex. We have been monitoring your approach. The Imperial forces have not yet discovered our location, but they are close. We need to tell you something crucial about the biomanufacturing facility. Thymol activated the response channel. Dr. Silmuth, it is good to hear your voice, old friend. What do you need to tell us? The facility wasn't destroyed. When the Imperial forces arrived, we managed to hide it by activating the emergency protocols. The entire complex is sealed behind quantum barriers. But Thymol, there's something else. We've been working on a cure ourselves. We've made a breakthrough. Dr. Park looked up sharply from her station, asked them about the viral vector delivery system. If they've solved the mass production problem, the transmission continued. We've developed an atmospheric dispersal method that can cure the entire planet in a matter of hours. But we need the Imperial blockade broken so we can begin the dispersal process. Chen felt hope surge through her chest. If the Kitharans had already developed a planetary cure, the mission could succeed even if they couldn't hold the orbital position for days. Admiral Torres, she called. Did you copy that transmission? Affirmative. All ships, new objective. We need to punch a hole in the orbital defenses around the northern continent, whatever it takes. The Coalition fleet reformed for a desperate assault on the Imperial positions protecting the research complex. Human ships led the charge, their crews knowing they were unlikely to survive but determined to clear the way for the cure. The Defiance shook under enemy fire as Chen maneuvered between Imperial cruisers, her smaller ship using its agility to avoid the worst of the bombardment. Around her, other Coalition vessels were taking devastating damage, but they pressed forward. Captain, Rodriguez called out. Major breakthrough on the surface. Our landing teams have reached the research complex and are working with the Kytheran survivors to prepare the cure for dispersal. On the tactical display, Chen could see the Imperial fleet concentrating their fire on her ship and the other Coalition vessels protecting the atmospheric dispersal operation. They were losing ships fast, but they just needed to hold a little longer. Dispersal beginning now, came Dr. Silmoth's voice over the comm. Atmospheric cure being released at multiple sites across the northern continent. Chen watched the planet's surface through the forward viewports. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the scarred brown landscape began to show traces of green as the cure spread through the atmosphere, neutralizing the plague that had devastated the world. But their victory came at a terrible cost. Half the Coalition fleet was destroyed or disabled, and the Imperial forces were regrouping for a final assault that would finish them all. Then Admiral Kreshitar's voice filled the communications channel one last time, and his tone had changed completely. The silence in the Galactic Council chambers was absolute as Dr. Melissa Park concluded her presentation. For 3 hours, she had methodically presented evidence of the Zephyrian Empire's biological warfare program, genetic analyses, intercepted communications, testimony from Kytheran survivors, and most damning of all, the complete records recovered from Imperial research facilities on Kythera Prime. Captain Chen sat in the witness section, watching the faces of the Council representatives as they absorbed the magnitude of what had been revealed. Beside her, Elder Thymol maintained his dignified composure, despite the exhaustion that showed in his dimmed silver markings. The past month had been a whirlwind of investigations, testimonies, and political maneuvering as the truth about the Kytheran plague spread across the galaxy. Council Speaker Vorthak, a massive being from the neutral Trillan Confederacy, activated his speaking platform. Dr. Park, you are stating that the biological weapon which devastated Kythera Prime was not only artificially created, but was specifically designed to frame the Kytheran people for their own genocide? That is correct, Speaker, Dr. Park replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. The pathogen contains genetic markers that could only have been produced by Zephyrian bioengineering techniques. More critically, the weapon was designed to activate the Kytheran healing response in a way that actually accelerated its spread, turning their greatest strength against them. Murmurs rippled through the gallery where representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to observe the proceedings. Chen could see the shock and disgust on many faces as the implications became clear. Furthermore, Dr. Park continued, analysis of Imperial military records recovered during the liberation of Kythera Prime shows that this was part of a systematic campaign to eliminate the Kytherans before they could expose other illegal biological weapons. Research. The Zephyrian representative, Admiral Vekshan, rose from his position. His crystalline form projected the harmonic patterns of outrage. but Chen had learned enough about Zephyrian physiology to detect the underlying frequencies of fear. These accusations are preposterous, Vekshan declared. The humans have fabricated this evidence to justify their illegal military actions against Imperial territory. The Empire demands that those responsible for the unprovoked attack on our forces be held accountable for their crimes. Elder Thymel stood slowly, his movement causing the entire chamber to fall silent. When Kitharin spoke in formal settings, the galaxy listened. Their reputation for absolute honesty was legendary. Admiral Vekshan, Thymel said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of medical service. 3 days ago, your Empire's biological weapons research facility on Proxima 7 suffered a containment breach. 17 Zephyrian researchers were exposed to an experimental pathogen designed to target Altarian physiology. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The Altarians had been among the Empire's closest allies. Those researchers, Thymel continued, are dying of the same type of bioweapon that was used against my people. They were brought to the emergency medical station that we established in the neutral zone. My healers have been working around the clock to save them. Admiral Vekshan's harmonic patterns shifted dramatically, the Zephyrian equivalent of panic. Furthermore, Thymel added, those researchers have provided complete testimony about the Empire's biological weapons program in exchange for medical treatment. They have confirmed everything Dr. Park has presented and revealed details of ongoing programs targeting at least 6 other species. Chen felt a surge of admiration for the elderly Kitharin. Even after everything his people had suffered, he was still saving the lives of those who had tried to destroy them. Speaker Vorthak called for order as the chamber descended into chaos. Representatives were demanding immediate investigations, sanctions, and in some cases, military action against the Empire. The Council will consider all evidence presented, Vorthak announced. But there is another matter that must be addressed. The human species, acting without Council authorization, launched military operations against Imperial forces and territory. Regardless of the justification, this violation of galactic law cannot be ignored. Captain Chen rose from her seat. Speaker Vorthak, may I address the Council? The chair recognizes Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Defiance. Chen walked to the central platform, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say, but now that the moment had arrived, she found herself speaking from the heart. Honorable representatives, a month ago my ship received a distress call from dying refugees. We faced a choice. Follow galactic law and let 50,000 innocents die in space, or follow our conscience and offer them sanctuary. She paused, looking around the chamber. We chose conscience. That choice led to the discovery that the galaxy had abandoned an entire species based on lies. It led to the revelation that one of our most powerful members was conducting genocide, while convincing the rest of us that the victims deserved their fate. Chen's voice grew stronger. Yes, we violated galactic law. We violated it because galactic law was being used as a weapon against the innocent. The human section of the gallery erupted in applause, quickly joined by representatives from dozens of other species. But this isn't really about humanity, Chen continued. This is about what kind of galaxy we want to live in. One where power determines justice, or one where justice determines power. One where the strong prey on the weak while everyone else looks away. Or one where we stand together to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Admiral Vekshan activated his speaking platform. The human speaks of justice while ignoring the chaos they have unleashed. The careful order that has maintained galactic peace for centuries is crumbling because one species decided their interpretation of morality superseded galactic law. Elder Thymel rose again, his silver markings now glowing with soft light, a sign of deep emotion in his species. Admiral, you speak of order, but what order allows the systematic murder of an entire species? What order demands that witnesses to genocide remain silent? What order makes helping victims of biological warfare a crime while creating those weapons is ignored? The Kitharin's voice carried across the chamber with moral authority that could not be denied. For 3 centuries my people served this galaxy. We healed your wounded, cured your diseases, and asked for nothing in return but the chance to help. When we were dying, only one species answered our call for help. Only one species was willing to risk everything to do what was right. Thymel turned to face the human delegation, his ancient eyes meeting Chen's. The humans didn't just save my people. They saved the idea that compassion is stronger than fear, that justice is more important than order, that some things are worth fighting for even when you stand alone. The chamber fell silent as the weight of his words settled over the assembled. Representatives Speaker Vorthak called for a formal vote on the charges against both the Zephyrian Empire and humanity. The results were overwhelming. The Empire was censured for crimes against galactic civilization and placed under mandatory oversight. Their biological weapons programs were to be dismantled under international supervision, and reparations were to be paid to the Kitharan people. The charges against humanity were dismissed, and a formal resolution was passed recognizing their actions as necessary intervention in the face of genocide. But perhaps most importantly, the Galactic Medical Accords were amended to include what became known as the Kitharan Clause. Any species providing medical aid to others would be granted permanent sanctuary status, immune from political persecution. As the council session concluded and representatives began filing out, Chen felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Admiral Torres smiling at her. "Not bad for a ship captain who just wanted to answer a distress call," he said. Chen looked across the chamber to where Elder Thymel was surrounded by representatives from species whose people had been saved by Kitharan healers over the centuries. They were offering resources, territory, and support for the rebuilding of the Kitharan homeworld. "Admiral," she said, "I think we may have accidentally started something good here." Outside the council chambers, the first ships were already departing for Cathara Prime. Not warships this time, but construction vessels, medical transports, and colony ships. The galaxy was coming together to help rebuild what had been destroyed. It wouldn't undo the pain of what had been lost, but it was a beginning. And sometimes Chen thought a beginning was all you needed to change everything. The Kitharans were going home, and they weren't going alone. 6 months later, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed sanctuary station, watching the transformation of Cathara Prime below. Where once there had been the geometric scars of Imperial strip mining operations, now there were sprawling cities of gleaming crystal and living wood. The planet's surface bloomed with the distinctive silver-green vegetation of a healthy Kitharan world, and the orbital traffic control reports showed a steady stream of ships arriving with supplies, volunteers and refugees coming home. "It's beautiful," said Dr. Melissa Park, joining Chen at the viewport. 6 months ago, this was a dead world. Now look at it. Chen nodded, but her attention was drawn to the ships in orbit around the planet. Vessels from across the galaxy worked side by side. Human construction ships labored alongside Altarian biosynthesis vessels, while Vegan agricultural experts collaborated with Trillan engineers. The coalition that had formed to save the Kitharans had evolved into something much larger, a new model for interspecies cooperation. Captain Chen, incoming priority transmission from Earth, came the voice of Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication center. Even after his promotion to lieutenant commander, he had insisted on serving aboard Chen's new command. Chen walked to the communications array where Admiral Torres's image appeared on the main screen. Behind him, she could see the familiar blue and green of Earth through the windows of Luna Command. "Sarah, I wanted to be the first to give you the news. The President has announced the formation of the Galactic Humanitarian Alliance. 37 species have signed on as founding members, with more joining every week." Chen felt a surge of satisfaction. The alliance had been discussed since the Kitharan crisis ended, but getting so many species to commit to formal cooperation had seemed impossible. "What's the mandate?" she asked. "Prevention of genocide, protection of refugees, and intervention in humanitarian crises regardless of political considerations," Torres replied with obvious pride. "Essentially, we're formalizing what you started when you answered that first distress call." "And the command structure?" Torres grinned. "The Alliance Council unanimously voted to offer you the position of Supreme Humanitarian Commander. Your new flagship is being constructed at the joint shipyards in the Centauri system, a ship designed specifically for humanitarian operations." Chen was quiet for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what was being offered. Command of the galaxy's first multinational humanitarian force was an honor beyond anything she had imagined. "There's something else," Torres continued. "The Kitharans have made a formal proposal that I think you'll find interesting." Before Chen could ask what he meant, Elder Thymel appeared in the communication center. His silver markings were brighter than Chen had ever seen them, the glow of a Cathrin who had found new purpose. "Captain Chen," Thymel said with deep respect, "my people have completed the restoration of our primary medical academies. We would like to propose a new institution, the Humanitarian Medical Corps. Catharan healers working alongside medical personnel from every Alliance species, trained not just in healing, but in the protection of those who cannot protect themselves." Chen understood immediately. Healers who can fight when necessary. Healers who know that sometimes the greatest healing requires stopping those who would do harm, Thymel corrected gently. "My people have learned that pure pacifism, while noble, is not always sufficient to protect the innocent." The idea was revolutionary. For centuries, the Kitharans had been strictly non-violent, believing that their role was to heal rather than harm. The Empire's betrayal had taught them that there were times when force was necessary to protect the vulnerable. "We've also received reports from our deep space monitoring stations," Torres added. "The Zephyrian Empire is fragmenting. 3 major sectors have declared independence and are requesting Alliance protection. The Empire's use of biological weapons against the Kitharans has triggered civil wars throughout their territory." Chen wasn't surprised. The revelation of the Empire's crimes had shattered their moral authority, and many Zephyrian worlds had been horrified to learn what their government had done in their name. Any response from what's left of the Imperial government? They've withdrawn to their core worlds and haven't responded to any diplomatic contact. Intelligence suggests they're consolidating resources for something, we don't know what yet. Dr. Park looked concerned. "Captain, if they're developing new biological weapons, that's why we need the Alliance," Chen replied. "No single species can monitor the entire galaxy for threats like this. But working together we can respond to any crisis before it becomes a catastrophe." A chime indicated an incoming transmission from the planet's surface. The screen split to show Dr. Silmoth, who had become the planetary coordinator for the reconstruction effort. "Captain Chen, we have the final numbers on the refugee return program. Over 2 million Kytharans have returned home so far, with more arriving daily. But perhaps more importantly, we're receiving requests for assistance from species across the galaxy. It seems that saving one people has inspired others to ask for help with their own problems." Chen smiled. It was exactly what she had hoped would happen. The Catharan crisis had demonstrated that the galaxy's problems could be solved when species worked together, instead of pursuing their own narrow interests. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" she asked. "They've formally disbanded the quarantine protocols and issued an apology to the Kitharan people," Torres reported. "But more significantly, they've voted to restructure their entire charter around humanitarian principles. The Alliance model is being adopted as the foundation for a new galactic government." Chen looked out at Cathara Prime again, watching a human transport dock with a Catharan medical station. 6 months ago, that simple act of cooperation would have been impossible. Now it was happening hundreds of times every day across the galaxy. "Captain," Thymel said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you. When my people first developed the cure for the Imperial Plague, we discovered something unexpected. The bioweapon was more sophisticated than we initially realized. It was designed not just to kill Kitharans, but to evolve, to eventually target other species with similar healing abilities." Chen felt a chill. "You're saying—" "I'm saying that if left unchecked, the plague would have eventually spread to any species that showed unusual medical capabilities. The Altarians, the Vegan biotechnicians, even certain human medical researchers. The Empire wasn't just committing genocide against my people. They were attempting to eliminate healing itself from the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Without healers, without medical advancement, the galaxy would have descended into an age of disease and suffering under Imperial control. By saving the Catharans," Thymel continued, "humanity saved the very concept of healing. You preserved the galaxy's future." Dr. Park stared at the data Thymel had provided. "The genetic markers we found, they were just the beginning. This weapon would have kept evolving, targeting new species every few generations until only the Empire remained immune." Chen felt the weight of what they had prevented. Without knowing it, humanity's simple response to a distress call had stopped the slow extinction of compassion itself. "So what happens now?" she asked. Torres answered first. "Now we build something better. The Alliance, the new galactic government, the Humanitarian Medical Corps. We're creating institutions that put compassion before politics and justice before power." And if the remnants of the Empire try something like this again? Chen asked. Thimal's silver markings flared with quiet determination. Then they will discover that the galaxy is no longer willing to stand by and watch evil triumph. They will face not just humanity's courage, but the combined strength of every species that believes in protecting the innocent. Chen looked around the communication center at the faces of beings from across the galaxy, all united by a shared commitment to doing what was right regardless of the cost. It wasn't the galaxy she had grown up in, but it was the galaxy she had helped create. Admiral Torres, she said finally, please inform the Alliance Council that I accept the position of Supreme Humanitarian Commander, and tell them we're going to need a bigger ship. As the communications ended and she returned to the viewport, Chen reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a simple distress call and a choice between following orders and following conscience. It had led to a war that changed the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. But perhaps most importantly, it had proven that sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do, and that making that choice, even when you stood alone, could inspire others to join you. Below them, Kithara Prime continued its healing, its silver-green forests growing stronger with each passing day. Above them, ships from dozens of worlds worked together to build a future where no species would ever again be abandoned in their hour of greatest need. The galaxy had turned its back on the Kitharans, but humanity had stood to shield them. And in doing so, they had reminded the galaxy what it truly meant to be civilized. It was a lesson worth the price they had paid to teach it.